Hi, I'm Jane Marks, and this is From the Heart. As you know, each week we come to you with a new topic that matters to teens and their families. Well, this week is no exception. We are going to take a deep dive into the world of ballet. Ballet is not typically known for its diverse representation, and while all of us are so familiar with Misty Copeland, there are very few names that we recognize on a regular basis. But there are many hidden, talented contributors who've made a big impact in the world of dance. And today we have joining us one of those talents. We have here Tyrone Brooks. Now, Tyrone Brooks is currently the artistic director of the Tallahassee Ballet, but more importantly, he brings a rich history of dance to this experience, and one that I feel will resonate with young dancers who are looking to change the palette of ballet inside and out. Tyrone, welcome to the show. We're so happy to have you today.
Thank you.
You know, we're going to talk about ballet, but we want to talk about your journey. How in the world did you get started in ballet?
I was intrigued. I was skeptical. I first saw the Dance Theater of Harlem and Hampton Institute, now Hampton University, in 1973. And that was a moment that changed my life. I had never seen people of color on stage, brown legs, in tutus. Because normally, you know, you open up a book, you see pink tights and pink point shoes. No people of color. So that was amazing to see that. And it opened a whole new world for me. And it also gave me
a charge
to say, I can do this. You know, there's someone else that I can identify with, and that's what's important.
So you were how old at the time?
I was 15.
You were 15 years of age. You see the Dance Theater of Harlem, and you're inspired and you're charged. And then what happens? I mean, how do you move from that to, I'm gonna do this?
Well, I've always been determined. You know, once you tell me, no, you cannot, and that's what I like, a challenge. And then at that point, I said, you know, I wanted to make this as a career. At that time, I was competing in gymnastics. So I had to make a decision either to compete in gymnastics or to really start to studying, because I wanted to go to New York. Dance Theater of Harlem came to Virginia, and I auditioned for the summer. I got a scholarship to the summer program, went to the summer for 8 weeks, and was asked to return to the fall. And during the fall, I got into the company, and that's all she wrote.
Well, now that's interesting. So here you are, a young guy. You go visit, and then they have auditions. You have this gymnastics background. This gymnastics background, coupled with your passion, it really pivots your life into the world of dance.
Yes, but not just the gymnastics background. I also did musical theater. I did musical theater. I used to sing in the a cappella choir, the jazz ensemble. I used to choreograph, not knowing what I was doing, but choreographing. And it's a multitude of things. This is why it's so important to be diverse. Because one day when I can't dance, I need to decide what else can I do?
Oh, see, this is a great message for teenagers.
Yes.
But again, so you weren't just an ordinary gymnast.
No.
All right, so teenagers listening to this story, they need to hear that you brought several skill sets to this.
Yes. The more diverse you are, the more marketable you are.
Okay.
And I always encourage dancers today, you know, make sure you can do more than one thing. You know, it's important. So therefore you're marketable, because right now the world has changed. No one's taking just a ballet dancer. You've got to do ballet, you have to do modern, you have to do contemporary, you have to be able to do voiceovers. So it's important that that you are articulate, you're caught up on current events, and you go and see other artists.
All right, so you have to have the full range of skills.
Absolutely.
But I want to go back to the dance experience itself, because so you're 15 when you see this.
Yes.
But at what age do you go from being 15 to for the dance school of Harlem?
Well, I immediately after graduation at 17, I went to New York.
Oh, so from high school?
Yes.
Okay, got it.
From high school, I went to New York, and studied there for the summer, like I said, for 8 weeks, and then returned for the fall. And during that time, there were some dancers in the company that were leaving. So Mr. Mitchell, the founder, Arthur Mitchell.
We've heard of
he
Arthur Mitchell.
He said to get the strongest gentlemen out of the school and teach them a certain role. And I was one of those gentlemen. And so it was a ballet called Greenings by a European choreographer named Glenn Tetley. And Glenn Tetley came. I did it. Several other guys, and he chose me. And a couple of weeks later, I was on the road on tour.
Now, I think one of the names that really resonates with me is Arthur Mitchell.
Yes.
Because he was the founder.
He's the founder, artistic director. Yes, he along with Carl Shook.
And for those of us people that are not familiar with the Dance School of Harlem, how many years has it been in existence?
They just celebrated 55 years.
55 years.
Yes.
And it sounds like, you were one of their, celebrities, graduates?
I'm an alumni, and I'm a product of him. And his whole purpose for starting the Dance School of Harlem is because he was on his way to Brazil to work with a company when he got the news that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. had been assassinated.
I knew that.
And his thought was, why am I going somewhere else when my people need me here? And he decided to stop dancing and started a school in Harlem. Of course, that was not welcome because it's a fallacy that blacks can't do ballet. But then again, he's like, I'll prove you wrong. So he opened the Dance School of Harlem School and then came a company.
And one of the things I think, will really strike a chord with teenagers across the country right now is that it was a social justice issue that prompted him to begin this school. It was the death of Martin Luther King, and I was familiar about that part of his history. And so we don't think about dance as being a game changer, but we've got so much more to talk about when we return. Welcome back. Throughout history, there have been great dancers of color, and I think so many of them have sometimes gone under the radar. So here's what we want you to talk about, Tyrone. How many have you had contact with, or perhaps even maybe they were just mentors? Maybe there was Catherine Dunham, or some of the greats, and you thought, this is who I admired. This is where I'm going to take my craft.
There are so many people and so many opportunities while dancing at the Dance School of Harlem that Mr. Mitchell introduced us to on many reasons, whether they were dancers, whether they were choreographers or set designers. And a few come to mind. Jeffrey Holder. Jeffrey Holder choreographed Dance School of Harlem's Firebird. We've had the opportunity to work with him on many occasions. And we also worked with the great Alonzo King of Lyons Ballet, who set an incredible ballet on the Dance School of Harlem.
Dance has opened up so many opportunities.
Yes, in 1984, the Dance School of Harlem represented the United States of America at the closing ceremonies in Los Angeles, California. What an incredible experience to stand there and hear them announce the Dance School of Harlem representing the United States of America to George Balanchine's Stars and Stripes. And to walk out there and be so proud with an incredible welcoming with the stage. It was one of those moments that's memorable.
No, one of those peak moments.
One of those peak moments.
Those are the ones I call the light bulb moments, the peak moments. One of the things that I also know about your history, Tyrone, is that you've also been involved in television specials. I mean, it's almost like you've had the full range of experiences.
Yes, my very first television special was in Aarhus, Denmark. And that was a taping of A Streetcar Named Desire, where I was the newspaper boy. And beyond that, we did A Fall River Legend. We did Arthur Mitchell's John Henry. We did Troy Game. We did Creole Giselle. So we've had several television specials, as well as we did a 60 Minutes in Barcelona, Spain.
Is there a time frame for how long you perform? You perform for how many years?
I performed for 20 years.
Okay, so 20 years. And at 20 years, at that point, is that when you stopped performing and you began teaching, or did someone reach out to you, they saw you perform, and they said, listen, we want you for our company? How did that happen?
I was always encouraged by Mr. Mitchell, Arthur Mitchell, that if you're interested in teaching, start teaching now. So throughout my career, I also taught at the Dance School of Harlem School. I was the associate director of our community outreach program, which is the performing art arm of the Dance School of Harlem School, which is also a part of the Kennedy Center residency, in which the Dance School of Harlem did every 10 weeks, every year. So I had that experience under my belt.
So what was your first teaching, directing position outside of the School of Harlem? the dance school of Hall?
Virginia School of the Arts. I went there for a summer to guest, and they invited me to come back to start a community dance program. And it was something that I had experience in, and I said, you know what, why not? I was tired of New York, I need to change. So I returned, and within a year, I was asked by the board to run the entire organization, and they promoted me to the executive director. Virginia School of the Arts, it was a performing arts boarding school for private school.
Now, was this a diverse school?
It wasn't at the time.
It wasn't at the time.
It was not at the time. So when I was asked by the board to do this, my first reaction was, this is wonderful, but I know nothing about running a school. So immediately they said, we will send you to Lynchburg College for business administration. So you don't say no to opportunity. So I took the challenge and did that for 6 years and saw how the curriculum grew, how the enrollment grew, because there were other people that saw someone that sat at the top that looked like me.
Well, welcome back. We're taking a moment to have join us Millicent Johnny, who was one of Tyrone's students back in the, no, I'm going to say back in the day, but more importantly, you're a choreographer, you're a dancer yourself. First, I have two questions for you, two quick questions. One, what was it like being a student of Tyrone? We'll start there.
Being a student of Tyrone was incredible. I met him 20 plus years ago at Florida State University when I was a dance major. And, you know, at the time, we didn't have a lot of dancers of color as a part of the program. We had, I think, 2 full-time faculty who identify as African American. So to have someone from the dance theater of Harlem come in, a man of color, with so much charisma and spunk and honesty and so much storytelling in the way that he taught, really, it deeply impacted me as a student. Yeah, I think sometimes it's important for us to see what's attainable in order for us to understand the path that we need to take in order to achieve the same things or similar goals. So it was incredible.
You've just given us the lesson I think that so many teens need to hear. Now, your career has taken off as well. Currently, you're what?
I run a production company called Millicent Johnny Films. I'm also a professor of dance and a professor of media. I teach at Jacksonville University and at Florida State University in the School of Communications. I'm a choreographer and a director. I do a lot of community engagement work. I'm an artist and activist. I identify as an educator. Definitely a world citizen and storyteller.
A world citizen and storyteller, and so much of where you came from started with Tyrone. It did. I did, and I think, you know, for students across the country, this is a story that I think is compelling. We thank you so much for joining us, because I think we need to see not only male dancers, but female dancers, and it must have been tough, you know, just navigating your own history. You've got a big job now, but getting there and being of color. What would you say was the biggest challenge?
Ooh, dealing with institutional racism? I mean, trying to tell stories about where you come from in spaces where that was just so completely outside of the context. You know, in ballet in particular, especially when you're working with someone like Tyrone, there are a lot of cultural nuances that when you're a dancer of color, you understand and you pick up on those nuances. But when you're sharing space with folks who don't necessarily come from that particular background, it's hard for you to build ensemble. It's hard for you to relate. And so as a student of color, you kind of have to work a little bit harder to get some of your white siblings to understand the nuances and what some of the goals are so that you can really have a fruitful and fulfilling experience on the dance floor. So sometimes I feel like it takes a lot more effort and energy when you are approaching a form that historically has been accepted as a white dance form. But when you have someone like Tyrone, who comes from such a rich legacy of Black dance, a rich legacy of ballet being placed on the Black body, we just have to work a little bit harder. You know, it's so nuanced and it's so complicated. There's the storytelling that comes from us because we come from those backgrounds, but then there's the nuance of, okay, how do I now translate this to someone and to audiences that don't necessarily have a context for where this is coming from?
As we continue today's conversation, you know, many young dancers of color are there at home and they're watching this, and, you know, I know they would love to have your advice about where to start. You know, some are coming from homes where ballet has been part of their culture. Some are coming from homes where they have no experience whatsoever, and like a young person like you are, where do they begin?
Well, you know, everyone's different, and I think what's important is that it starts with us as adults. As mentors, is to give them some type of guidance, because kids want guidance, they want structure, and if anything, they need to know that they're important, and that anything is possible.
So we expose them first.
Exposure is key, because, like I said, I saw someone that looked like me that gave me that thing that said, "Yes, you can do that, Tyrone."
I gave you that fire.
Yes, I got that. I was fired up.
All right, so we have students all over the country, and as I said, some in wonderfully developed communities, some in compromised communities. And so, suppose I'm a student, and I have very little. My parents are working parents, but I'm interested in it. How can I get introduced to that in big communities and small communities?
Well, even more so now, there are lots of community-based programs, after-school programs, because that's where you find a lot of raw talent. Is there after-school programs? For example, the Dance Theater of Harlem, we would have an after-school program, and some of those students went from the after-school program into the company.
Mm-hmm. All right, so some really smart choreographers like yourself would go out and look for this talent.
Or it just comes to you.
Well, how does it come to you?
You'd be surprised. And this is where am I just not an educator, I'm also a social worker. And I say that because every child has a different story. And it's always that child that has less, that has more to give. And being able to identify that, but that comes with experience in working with children.
You know, historically, when we thought of dancers, and certainly in ballet, we did think of a particular figure and size and body type and body image. But is that the case at this point? I mean, do dancers still need to be cognizant of body image? And, because certainly over the years, we've seen some change, in some cases, a lot of change.
I think it depends on the organization, but globally, dance has changed. For me personally, and every artistic director looks for something different. I want a healthy dancer. That's it. That's what's important to me, but mentally healthy first. And this is why it's something I like to incorporate with my company, is to have a mental health component. Because if they're healthy mentally, then physically they're going to be okay.
That's an important point, because, quite frankly, being in the mental health field over the years, I have seen a lot of dancers who experience body image issues, which translates into eating disorders. And so certainly I think probably in your field, you're right about being sensitive to the mental health issues.
But also, how we communicate to young people is very important. What I say to a 13-year-old is heard differently from what I would say to an 18-year-old. I could say, I need you to hold your abdominals holding your stomach, to an 18-year-old, where if I say that to a 13-year-old, it may come across, in her mind, Mr. Brooks is calling me fat.
Well, as we close out today's show, we're going to get our final thoughts from Tyrone. And, as a director and as a choreographer, as a person with a rich history of dance experiences, what message would you give young dancers as they begin this journey, as they navigate this journey? What would you say to them?
I would say to approach it with honesty, integrity, so at the end of the day you can say, thank you, God, I've used all that you've given me.
You've used all the talents that you've given me. And so if you approach it with passion like you did, if you approach it with honesty, and I think if you had a little grit, because quite frankly, Tyrone,
You're unstoppable.
yeah, but you have grit, and you can tell that you have stuck with it all these years. And certainly, if I was a young dancer and I heard your story, that would fire me up. And I think for those of us who are interested in this experience, we've learned a lot today, and that if we're really committed to the world of dance, this is a place to start, but find a mentor like Tyrone Brooks. Look in your community for people who share this passion, but more importantly, not just share this passion, understand that it requires balance, it requires sensitivity, and it requires a positive, healthy culture. Today's show has amplified the world of dance. Perhaps there are new dancers who are watching today's show who will not only make a difference, but will continue to change the world of ballet, both inside and out. So until next week, I'm Jane Marks, and this is From the Heart. Okay, got it.